Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Thursday morning the 9th of January and here in northern England we have had another dusting of the white stuff this morning. We go years sometimes without any snow and then we get this, but it's only a little bit so that's alright. So I want to talk about the Delphi case this morning. So if you've been following the case, I'm sure you're aware that for 3 consecutive evenings, the defence diaries, Bob and Ali, are interviewing Rick Allen's defence team. It was Jennifer Auger and then last night was Andrew Baldwin. Tonight will be Brad Rosie. People have asked me if I'm going to cover this, whether I'm going to do a live stream about what they're talking about. I do plan to go live when all 3 interviews have been done, just to discuss them as a whole. I think it's really interesting to hear about the lawyers, get to know them a little bit as people, and also get some little pieces of information about Rick Allen that we didn't know. That's all dead interesting, but it's not necessarily something that I want to kind of do my own videos about. What I am interested in, though, is about the case. Of course, they're not going to be able to say too much about the case because Rick's appealing. But Andrew Baldwin's interview had some interesting little nuggets in there, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. Take it away, Andy.
It's time for you guys to start being journalists.
Before an angry Andrew Baldwin left the courthouse, 13 News overheard him speaking to Richard Allen's wife, saying, "It ain't over. The world's watching. The world sees what's going on."
So one question that was asked was, how is Rick Allen doing now? Andy said, I don't know, not been able to see him, which isn't unusual, that's normal. But this case is anything but normal, as I'm sure you're aware if you're following the case. Geez, since Rick Allen's been arrested in October of 2022, there's been nothing whatever normal about this case. So Andrew said that the last time he spoke to Rick was after the sentencing.
So the last time I talked to Rick was after the sentencing. So I had planned to go up and talk to Holman afterwards, but Jennifer took care of that apparently. After the disgusting things that he said. And that would have not been the first time that I had confronted him, but I'm glad I didn't because it was not appropriate and it would not have been appropriate. And I would have probably been a little bit more animated than Jennifer was. She's a little bit more classy, probably. The reason I wasn't there is I followed Rick out.
The guards in Carroll County were super nice. At lunchtimes, the lawyers would go down to the basement and wherever Rick was being held and have lunch with him, bring him food, and the guards were super nice. All right, if a prisoner's kicking off, if a prisoner's like super violent, they've got to initiate some kind of, I don't know, discipline or something. But when it's just a normal dude, whether they're factually guilty or not, there's no need for the guards to be complete monsters if that guy's just kind of sitting there minding his own business. So anyway, after the sentencing, Andy ran after Rick and wanted to have a word with him, about the appeal.
What I wanted Rick to know was, there was a drumbeat going on in that sentencing of basically don't appeal, don't appeal. If you really found God, you're not going to appeal was essentially the thing that was being stated.
The closing arguments, now, the majority of us haven't heard those because injustice in this case was done in the dark. But if the closing arguments were anything like the press conference, which I covered on this channel, I'm sure that some of what was said was pretty out of order and just unprofessional, unheard of. I've never seen a press conference like it. The stuff that Carter said, it's just horrible. Horrible stuff. And Andrew Baldwin is clearly still very emotional about the events, and it's incredibly hurtful for somebody who has been a lawyer for a long time and is well respected in his field. When they got disqualified in that just nasty, horrible, vindictive way, it was actually Brad Rosie who persuaded Andrew Baldwin to come back on the case. Anyhow, I digress. So Andy wanted to make sure that Rick Allen wasn't buying all of this nonsense.
You know, that's disgusting to me. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, with everything that has happened, you know, everybody, Rick Allen is more than anybody, but the people in Delphi, the people that have paid a lot of attention to this case throughout the world, I guess, everybody needs to have an actual resolution where the evidence actually comes in, and which is one of the reasons, you know, that the appeal is happening.
The fact that Judge Gull asked Rick whether he was going to appeal, you know, as if he was going to just say no.
The judge asked him, do you want to appeal this? Some words to that effect. Now that actually doesn't happen that often. Usually that's decided later because we have 30 days to make decisions. So
it's like she was trying to use the pressure that they just tried to manipulate him, to pressure him to say no right then and there.
I don't want to say that, but I got to say I was a little worried after that kind of pressure-filled morning of him just saying, you know what, let these families, you know, let's just not do the appeal. I was worried that he might think that. So I ran after him, and on his, you know, the guards, again, they're super nice guys. They were nice enough to let me kind of put my arm around him and say, hey, just ignore all that noise. Okay.
The pressure was on even then.
Rick is a good, like, human being, you know, when he, you know, he doesn't like that the families don't have closure, you know. That's upsetting to him.
But that was the last time that Andy Baldwin spoke to Rick Allen. This is what Andy said about the usual process that happens in Indiana.
But typically, yeah, it's 3, 4, 5 weeks. It's more about how the Department of Corrections, they may have 3 guys that need to get picked up in Decatur County and 2 in Shelby County. And okay, we'll just make one round trip and swing by and pick all of them up. Well, Rick went that day to RDC, a Regional Diagnostic Center in Plainfield. And that's where they do like an assessment of the right place for him to go based upon a battery of tests, and they have people talking to him. And typically that takes, I told somebody this today, actually, you're not going to be able to talk to him for 3 to 4 weeks. He's going to be in the RDC for 3 to 4 weeks minimum. And they don't allow you to talk. They're in there doing their thing. He's, you know, and they're bringing psychologists. I don't know exactly everything that they do, but they're making assessments about the proper place for him to go.
So an assessment center sounds about right. Sounds fine. But Rick has been just fast-tracked, shall we say, through that process and sent straight back to Westville.
I mean, I've never seen it ever done more quick. Now, I could be wrong. And maybe it's common to get it done in 6 days, which is what happened in this case. 6 days later, Rick Allen is back in Westville. My mind is blown by that. I don't get it. I don't want to think the things that I think, you know. But yeah, you know, this guy with mental health, Newcastle is a place, a DOC facility that has mental health facility. I was presuming that's where he would end up.
And that they wouldn't be so bold as to send him straight back to Westville. He said, you know, I don't want to say, look, I'll say it for you. This is what they're doing to him. They're gonna send him into a horrendous state of psychosis. I think Rick Allen will be very lucky if he gets to his appeal at all. At worst case scenario, I think they're just gonna kill him and say it's suicide. That's just worst case scenario. Would they be so bold as to go that far? Maybe not, but they're certainly going to send him into psychosis again, aren't they? And the pressure will be put on him because they want him to say that he's not going to appeal. And if he did say he's not going to appeal, they'd probably send him to somewhere more appropriate. Westville is just this hellhole where they got out of Rick Allen what they needed to for the trial. It worked, so why not do it again? If it works, you're just going to carry on doing it, aren't you? But it's positive news about the appeal. Judge Gull has granted Rick to have 2 appellant lawyers. Now, people have said, why are Brad Rosie, Andrew Baldwin, Jennifer Auger not doing Rick's appeal? Because they're trial lawyers, they're not appellant lawyers. Andy does want back on for round 2. You know, a level of confidence there that an appeal will be successful. I would say that appeal is absolutely going to be successful because of all the shady shit that Judge Gull has done. But this is Indiana, and I'm not confident that the appellant system is going to be fair. I'm not confident about that. I sincerely hope it is. I mean, surely Judge Gull doesn't have the kind of reach that worst case scenario might provide, and that Nick McClelland doesn't have that kind of reach either. But I'm just browbeaten by this stuff, and if I am, can you imagine how the defence team feel? Can you imagine how Rick feels and his family feels? And, you know, this is about justice for Abby and Libby, but the injustice done towards Rick Allen is just astonishing, in my opinion. It's absolutely astonishing. I've never seen anything like it. So the team is going to include Mark Lehman. That's great news. Mark Lehman was the guy who spoke at the Indiana Supreme Court, you know, when Brad and Andy were disqualified for absolutely no reason. Mark Lehman was the guy he was amazing. He was really good. So Rick's going to have a really strong appeals team. Look, I would be confident that this appeal is going to be successful and we're going to get a retrial if it wasn't for the fact that this is Indiana. But anyway, it's positive news. Looking forward to Brad Rosie tonight. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys. Ooh.